Okay, so here's an attempted quick as I can demonstration on how the macro editor works. Step one is obviously click on the macro knob that you want to edit. Right now we'll just use macro 1. I think if you slide it up and down, this is like the default position when you pick a patch. You know how some patches have default macro positions that aren't middle or whatever. Anyway, so each macro has 4 different parameters it can modulate. We'll just focus on these 2 to start off with. The depth knob controls how intense the modulation is going to be when the macro knob is at maximum, and how much the value is going to be increased or decreased when you have the knob at the top. And the start and end control the range. Oh, it's vertical sliding. That's weird. The start and end knobs control what range of the macro knob this modulation will be effective for, and that will make a little more sense once I finish demonstrating it. So what we're going to do is we've got the initial patch. Let's just make sure we have. Perfect. And we've got a sample pattern because I've got one hand. I can't play a note and do a knob at the same time. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use macro knob 1 to modulate the cutoff as well as the pitch. So let's go into the filter section, and we're going to turn the filter frequency down to the middle, or like around here actually. We'll turn this down and we'll turn up the resonance and down. Sounds about right. Turn down the volume a bit. Upstairs neighbours are being a bit bitchy. Okay, so now as you can see, macro knob 1 does sod all. What we're going to do is we're going to route the first parameter to filter cutoff frequency. Now let's try tweaking it. It doesn't do anything. Why? Because the depth is still 0. So let's turn the depth up to about 30 odd. Now notice the knob is at minimum, so the cutoff is still in its default position. We'll call this the default position, whatever you've got on the other pages. That's the default position. Okay? Now, once we turn this knob up all the way to the top, the cutoff is going to be at default position plus 33, if that makes sense, because the depth is at 33. If it will focus. If it will focus. There we go. Turn this down just a little bit. So let's tweak the knob. Why isn't it focusing? It's not. Oh, Christ. Anyway, so yeah, that works as expected. Now, what happens if we turn the depth knob to the other side, the minus value? Well, what will happen then is when the macro knob is at minimum, the cutoff will be at default value, which is about the middle, as we saw in the filter page earlier. But when we turn up the knob up to the maximum, the cutoff's going to be at default value minus 30 something. So let's see what happens if we press play and turn the knob up. The cutoff goes down because remember, we've got a negative depth. So that's the depth slider explained. We'll turn this back up to the top so we've got a pretty classic sounding cutoff sound. Alright, that's pretty decent. But what if, for some wacky reason, you wanted macro knob 1 to control not only cutoff, but also pitch? Let's give that a go and get the range slider in action. So, the way this works is, right now, the minimum position of the knob for cutoff for this one is right at the bottom. The maximum position is right at the top. So we have to turn the knob all the way to maximum before we get a depth of 39. Watch what happens if I turn the end range to just about 40% of the knob. I don't know if this will come through on camera, but once I press play, you might notice that I'll only need to turn the knob just a tiny amount. And look, you can see, I don't know if you can see the lights changing, but the cutoff is still as maximum. because we've only defined a tiny amount of the range of the macro knob. Now, why on earth would you want to do that, you think? Answer: for multifunction macros. Let's remember, each macro can modulate 4 different parameters independently, and this range slider is extremely powerful because it means that you can modulate different things for different ranges of the knob. This is quite difficult to explain, especially because I'm a little bit drunk, but let's see if it makes sense if I do it this way. So, here's another parameter we can modulate. Right now, it's not sent to anything, but let's send it to oscillator pitch. Oh, does it matter? Can't we do both pitches at once? Huh. I guess not. I swear you could do in the other editor. I'll have to check that out. Semitones tune. Yeah, I think it's this one. Let's just see what happens if we do this right now. Yeah, that's what I want. But what we're going to do is let's turn the depth just down a tiny amount. We can experiment a bit more with how the depth slider works, and we're going to make this macro only work for the upper half of the knob. So what this means is, as you turn the knob up from bottom to top, firstly the cutoff is going to be modulated really high, and then secondly the pitch is going to be modulated, increased, because you see the knob range for this macro is only kind of the first half of the knob, and the knob range for this macro is only the second half of the knob. So let's see what happens when we turn this up. I'm going to press play on the old thing. We're going to slowly turn up modulation knob 1. The cutoff comes up, and then what happens? Look at that! It might make a little more sense if I use the macro knob on the screen so you can see more clearly how these come into play. Press play on the thingy. You see how the cutoff modulation is directly corresponding to the range that we have on the slider. And then if we increase it further, the pitch modulation will directly correspond to this part of the slider. And now if we turn the depth knob to the negative for the pitch, of course we all know what's going to happen at this point. That's right, the pitch goes down. Now this is a really basic example, but you can use this kind of thing to make knobs which increase the cutoff for most of the thing, but right at the end when you turn it, knobs that increase the cutoff for most of it, but right at the end it also brings up the resonance. So you could have like full cutoff here and then have some next level acid sound here. The possibilities are endless, but well, I'll leave that up to you.